back, everyone. This is another episode of the Exodus Project. I'm joined with my good friend, Rabbi Stuart Federer again.
My pleasure to be here.
We'll get it out of the way right out the gate. Author of the brilliant book, Judaism and Christianity, A Contrast.
Yay.
Available in English and Spanish, both of which are linked in the description of this
How
video.
come it went out of focus?
Because it thinks it's the background. It needs to see your face. Hold it like beneath your face.
It doesn't work. Oh, it's still not working. What is this background business? Oh, well, whatever. At any rate.
But yeah, everyone, today we're going to talk about the use of the name Yeshua in Messianic circles. And it's creeping out of Messianic circles too. But before we get started, everyone, hit that subscribe button, turn on the notifications, give the Rabbi and I a big thumbs up. And like I said, check out that description for any book resource you may need. But all right, Rabbi, turn it over to you.
All right.
And we'll get moving.
It is amazing to me how everybody changes everything. First of all, you had Jesus in the Greek in about 50 years ago. No, more than that. Oh my God, are we old? I'm old. 70 years ago. Okay. 60, 20. So yeah, 60 years ago, you came on this. A word came on the scene called Yeshua, and for thousands of years, quite literally, nobody ever heard that name in regard to Jesus. There are subtle reasons for that, which we're going to have to get into. Okay, but they'll claim that Yeshua is the name for Jesus. Steve, what is your first name fully spelled out?
Steven.
Right. So if I called you, hi, Steven, is that your name?
No.
Your name is Steve or Steven, not Steving. And if a person called you Steving, you wouldn't be happy with it because they're not pronouncing your name. They're pronouncing some distortion of your name.
Right.
Well, keep that in mind when we talk about the proper pronunciation of this incorrect word.
Mm-hmm.
They don't get it correct, but when they use it, they don't even pronounce it correctly. All right. So first of all, on the screen you can see three words in Hebrew. The first one is as they say it, Yeshua. Okay. So underneath the yud is two dots up and down. It has it's a shva, like the vowel that goes with the G in gesundheit. It's just barely saying the sound of that letter. Yeshua, gesundheit.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. The second one there is pronounced Yeshua. But underneath the yud, the first letter, you see two dots sideways.
Yep.
Okay. And as we're going to see, even though that's not the name of Jesus, Jesus never heard that name in his life. Okay. That would be the closest that they could come if they were basing it on this name, on the Hebrew name.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then they'll say, and then we have the third word there, which is Yeshua. Accent on the third syllable.
Yep.
And they'll claim that, they'll claim that the word Yeshua, pronounced their way, they'll claim that the word Yeshua means salvation. No, it does not mean salvation. Salvation is a noun. The third word there, Yeshua, okay, accent on the third syllable, is the word that means salvation.
Mm-hmm.
Many languages, words have gender.
Yep.
The word gender was never used to describe a human being. The word gender was used to describe words in linguistics.
Yep.
Okay. Male and female words.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. In the ancient world, you're not going to give a male a female name, a feminine word. Okay? It's not going to be done that often. Let me put it that way. Yeshua is how you say the word salvation. But Yeshua, you can see the hey on the end. The 1, 2, 3, 4, fifth letter is a hey.
Yep.
Okay? It makes the accent on the third syllable Yeshua. Okay? That's a feminine word. You wouldn't give it to Jesus. You wouldn't call him by a female name. Go to Israel. Go to Israel now. Okay? And see what happens if you use a feminine word to describe a male, or a male word to describe a female. Okay? Or if you pronounce like the conjugation of a verb, like many languages, has to agree in gender and number. So if it's plural female, then you have to use plural female conjugation of a verb.
Right.
Okay, so just try to use the wrong one when you're in Israel. See what happens.
Yeah, right. Okay, and it's so clear because if anyone here can read any Hebrew, this is a kamatz, which means it's longer, right? And that's a patach, which means it's shorter.
Exactly. Yeshua. Okay. The second thing that they'll say that, well, we'll get to that in a minute. Okay. They'll say that, look, we don't have a Hebrew text for the Christian's New Testament.
Right.
Okay. All we have from that period of time that would have any collection of names in it is the Mishnah, the first section of the Talmud, and then the Gemara, which is the second section of the Talmud. And remember that there are two Talmuds. Okay, there is the Babylonian Talmud, and there is the Yerushalmi, the Jerusalem Talmud. The Mishnah is the first section. It covers, give or take, 200 years BCE to 200 years CE. That's a 400-year period of time. In the Mishnah, where you've got all sorts of Yehoshua's, okay, Hosea, okay, you have incredibly few, maybe two in the entire Mishnah, somebody named Yeshua.
Right.
Yeshua. Okay, so they can't say that the word Yeshua was a common name for people back then. It wasn't. Otherwise, it would appear far more often in the Mishnah, and certainly far more often in the Babylonian Talmud and in the Jerusalem Talmud, Yerushalmi Talmud. Okay,
right.
Not there.
Right.
So it's not that common. Okay, and the Septuagint in the Greek, I couldn't do Greek on my word processor, but in the Greek, the Septuagint for all three, Hosea, Yehoshua, and Yeshua, okay, for all three of those, uses Iesus alone. So in the Hebrew scriptures, if it says Hosea, in the Septuagint, it says Iesus. If anywhere in the Tanakh, it uses Yehoshua, in the Septuagint, for Yehoshua, it still uses Iesus.
Right.
And for Yeshua, long A in the beginning, okay, it still uses Iesus.
Yeah.
In the Septuagint for the Greek rendering of Yeshua. Okay, so we cannot know what Jesus was actually called back then.
Right. And I think something else that's important is when we do see the name Yeshua, it's
Yeshua or Yeshua?
Yeshua. It's a truncated version of Yehoshua. There's a few times in Tanakh we do see that regarding like Yehoshua.
Well, actually, we're going to find out that's modern Hebrew. Modern Hebrew uses Yeshua as a contraction for Yehoshua. But the 2,000 years ago, not so much.
Okay.
But we may not even get to that, but whatever. Okay, the point is that the Greek, when it's trying to use the Greek word Steve, let me ask you a question. Okay, this goes to another element that we have to make sure to understand. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know. Maybe there's I don't know. Steve, your name is Stephen.
Mm-hmm.
If you went to Italy, would you be called Stephen, or is there an Italian equivalent?
I'm sure there's an Italian equivalent, but I
Right,
wouldn't
but they're not
expect them
going
to
to
call
call
me
you
that.
Steve. But if somebody is Italian, they're not going to call them in Italy the English pronunciation of Stephen.
Right.
Okay. If my name is Alexander, born and raised in the United States, they call me Alexander. Okay. If I go to Mexico, is a Mexican baby born and raised in Mexico who's given the same equivalent name, they're not going to say, "Hi, Alexander." They're going to say, "Hola, Alejandro."
Mm-hmm.
Because you use the local pronunciation of that same name.
Right.
It's the name, but it's going to be pronounced differently wherever you're at.
You say that. My last job, I was working with a Dominican fella, and he always called me Esteban.
Right.
Yes.
Esteban. Perfect. I couldn't think of perfect example. Okay. So if you have a baby born, okay, you're not going to call him Yeshua. You're going to use the pronunciation of everybody who pronounces it in the local area. In
Right.
Hebrew, as we just saw, it's Yeshua, not Yoshua, but Yeshua,
Mm-hmm.
which nobody in the Christian world says. Okay. And okay, well, we'll stop at that. Okay. Now, I know I beat a dead horse with this one. Okay. But if you take a look in the Bible, okay, Christians will say Yeshua spelled Yeshua. Okay, but in the Hebrew scriptures, okay, I'm sorry, in the King James, okay, in the King James, they're not going to spell it Yeshua. They're going to spell it Jeshua.
Right.
So let's take a look, not at every one. I cite the sources. If you want to go look at it yourself. Okay. But I give quite a few. In 1 Chronicles 24:11, the 9th to Jeshua, the 10th to Shechaniah. But how do they spell Jeshua in 1 Chronicles 24:11? It's Le Yeshua.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. It's the third pronunciation of these three names that we just had. Le Yeshua. Okay. 2 Chronicles 31:15. And next to him were Eden and Miniamin and Jeshua. Okay. But again, it appears there as Yeshua. Long A underneath the next to the Y. Yeshua. Okay. Ezra chapter 2, verse 2, which came with Zerubbabel, Jeshua, Nehemiah, and it goes on from there.
Mm-hmm.
Every single instance where the word Jeshua is found in the Hebrew scriptures, and it's a proper noun, a name of somebody. If you look at the Hebrew, it's not Yeshua, it's Yeshua.
Right.
Okay. You want to take a look at that? Go right ahead.
That's
okay.
true.
Ezra
But we do see. I don't mean to cut you off, but
oh no, go ahead.
I was pretty sure that it does describe this, Joshua the son of Nun at one point, and it does in let me see which chapter.
It does what?
Give me 1 second. Yes. In Nehemiah chapter 8, they truncate.
Wait. I can't move that fast. I can't move that fast.
You're fine.
Okay, wait a minute. And you said Nehemiah?
Mm-hmm. Chapter 8.
Okay, wait a minute. This takes a while.
But it's spelled the same way, Yeshua. but it's talking about Yehoshua, son of Nun.
Come on. Okay. Chapter 8. And what's the verse?
Stand by. 17.
17. Okay. Yasu kol hakahal. Hashavim min hashri sukot v'yeshvu b'sukot kilo asu mimei Yeshua.
Yep, the same way, that same third way.
Right.
But the crazy part is that the Christian Bible will still translate that as Joshua.
Right. Okay. Okay. Can you move it past all these? Slowly go through the verses so people can look it up on their own. Mm-hmm. Okay. Because I don't have all of them listed. I had all the way to Ezra chapter 2, verse 40. Children of Yeshua, B'nai Yeshua. Oh, can I show you something real quick? Doesn't matter. You can stay stopped where you are.
Mm-hmm. Go ahead.
Okay. When I copy-pasted it, including the trope marks, the singing marks, the marks that tell you how to chant, and the trope mark is always put over the syllable that is accented. Mm-hmm. So if you go to the top, don't move it, but 1 Chronicles 24:11, okay, you'll see that above the shin, the third letter is the mark to show how it's sung.
Yep, that little curvy guy right there.
Right, exactly. But it's over the shoe part, but Yeshua. So
right, and over the iron.
And you'll yes, that okay, yes. All right, but take a look at the other ones. Everywhere where there is a trope mark, how to chant it, how to sing it mark, it's always over the shin, over the second letter. Mm-hmm. Okay. Now go further down all the way, to the. Okay, you got it there. Vayakom Yeshua. Okay, Ezra 3:8. Okay, Jeshua the son of Yozadak, Yeshua ben Yotzadak. Mm-hmm. But you see over the shin, the third letter in that word, but still over the sh part. That's where the trope mark is that tells you it's Yeshua, not Yeshua, but Yeshua. Okay, and you can see there, I have, at least according to my Bible program, every place that Yeshua is found in the Tanakh. You can go look them up yourselves.
Yeah, and you have Nehemiah 8:17 there, just like we mentioned.
Do what?
I said you have Nehemiah 8:17 there, just like we read.
Oh, yes, right. Yes. Which is still Yeshua.
Right.
Okay.
Yep.
Now, this to me is very interesting. Okay. Go look up Wikipedia and go look up the article in Wikipedia for Yeshua. See, if it was pronounced Yeshua properly, it wouldn't be Yeshua. It would be something like Yei. Mm-hmm. Okay, Yeishua. But every Christian I hear, every Christian minister, every Messianic rabbi always says Yeshua, Yeshua. But it's always Yeshua. Okay, Yeshua or Yeshua with vowel pointing Hebrew, and then the Hebrew shows it's pronounced Yeshua.
Right, because we know that's a tzere.
Clearly, the first two words, Yeshua or Y''Shua, shows that they are pronouncing it as Yeshua, and then it says with vowel pointing, and then it says that it's supposed to be pronounced Yeshua. Mm-hmm. Okay, and it's not going to do foreign languages, so that's why you got these weird question marks in the next of where it's Romanized. Was a common alternative form to the name Yehoshua. Mm-hmm. That's true in the modern times, but not in the days of Jesus. And in the Mishnah, Babylonian, and Jerusalem Talmud, the name Yeshua is rare, not common in Jesus' day, while the other two of Yehoshua and Hoshea were common. I think we actually talked about that. Okay, move up a little bit. Okay. Now, Christians want to say how, well, Jesus's real name was Yeshua. Okay. But look at what it says in the same Yeshu. Look, it's not Yeshua article in Wikipedia, but the Yeshu article in Wikipedia.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, the term Yeshu is not undisputedly attested prior to the Talmud and Tosefta, let alone as a Hebrew original for Jesus. In the case of the Jesus of Christianity, Clement of Alexandria and Saint Cyril of Jerusalem claimed that the Greek form, which is Iesus, itself was his original name, and that it was not a transliteration of a Hebrew form.
Right.
So they didn't go to Jesus from Yeshua. They went, his name was the Greek. He was called by that in Greek, according to Clement of Alexandria and St. Cyril of Jerusalem. Okay. That's it. And by the way, I have the, what's it called? The note. So in the article Yeshu, in the Wikipedia article, in the Yeshu article in Wikipedia, okay, this is note 17, origin of the name Jesus Christ in the Catholic Encyclopedia. Okay, go down a little further.
Just one comment. If that's true, if that is true and he was named Jesus,
right,
you could almost guarantee he was a Hellenized Jew if he existed.
And as we're going to see very soon, okay, Steve, I wish I could think of modern English equivalents where we spell a word, but we don't pronounce every letter in the word. Like there's certain letters that become silent, even though they're still found when we spell it.
Okay.
Okay. My point is that Jesus never heard himself called Yeshua. And in the Aramaic of the Galilee in which he was raised, they dropped the ayin on the end and called him Yeshu. And Christians will say, oh, the Jews made that up because Yeshu is for short, is what's it called? It stands for Yimach Shemo V'zichro. May his name and his memory be blotted out.
Right.
That's not how nicknames work. Nicknames, you get the nickname first, and then later they come up with an explanation for it.
Right.
Okay. You know, somebody will say, that guy, he's a rat, and they start calling him rat. And then later they'll say, well, what is that? Oh, let me tell you what rat means. Really awesome to us. In other words, the nickname comes first, and then later they start explaining it. So his name, as we're about to see, was pronounced Yeshu. When it was written, you may have seen the ayin there. But when it was pronounced Yeshu. Okay, Adolf Niebauer, 19th century, aware of the problem but believing the term to be a reference to Jesus, argued that it was a shortened form of Yeshua, resulting from the final letter ayin no longer being pronounced. Okay, that's found in Neubauer's Jewish Controversy and the Pugia Fide in the Expositor number 7 in 1888, page 24. Hugh Schonfield, who wrote a great book called The Passover Plot, I believe. Is that him? I think that's him. Argued in a similar fashion that it was the northern pronunciation resulting from a silent ayin. And that's found in his book, The History of Jewish Christianity from the 1st to the 20th century, written in 1936, published by Duckworth. Okay. This view was shared by Joachim Jeremias, which is found in, I can't pronounce it, it's German, New Testament Theologie, whatever. Okay. And Fusser in 1989, page 15, who argued it was the Galilean pronunciation. He was known as Jesus of Nazareth. He was raised in Nazareth. He was raised in the Galilee.
Mm-hmm.
Well, in the Galilee, even if they wrote his name with the I-N on the end, they didn't pronounce it.
Mm-hmm.
Jesus would never have heard himself called Yeshua. If he was called anything in Hebrew, he'd have been called Yeshua or Yeshua with an A sound on the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Okay. Now, just to be fair, just to be honest, just to keep it even-handed, okay, the same article on Yeshu in the Wikipedia writes the following. The views of these theological scholars, however, are contradicted by the studies of Hebrew and Aramaic philologist E.Y. Kutcher, and note 15, professor of Hebrew philology at the Hebrew University of Jerusalem and member of the Hebrew Language Academy, who noted that although the ayin became a silent letter, wait a minute, so it was a silent letter, it is never dropped from written forms, nor is its effect on the preceding vowel lost. So you might have heard a little bit of the A on the end, Yeshua, okay, but it really wasn't pronounced. Okay, if it's not pronounced, you're not going to hear it very strong, as would have had to occur if Yeshua were derived from Yeshua in such a manner. Kutcher noted, moreover, that the guttural ayin was still pronounced in most parts of Galilee, but we don't know if Jesus ever heard himself called Yeshua or Yeshua.
Mm-hmm.
And Christians will say, oh, they made up the pronunciation Yeshu because of this, for short for Yimach Shemo V'Zichro. Well, no, you find Yeshu in Christian writings as well. How about the Hymns and Carols of Christmas by Johann Sebastian Bach called Jesu, Joy of Man's Desiring? So even in Christian Christmas songs, they call him Yeshu, but they pronounce it Jesu or whatever.
Yep.
So he was never going to be called Yeshua. They say that Yeshua comes from the word salvation, which is not. That's Yeshua, a feminine word which Jesus would never have been called.
Right.
Okay. And if it was pronounced anything resulting in that, it was probably Yeshua. Okay, not Yeshua. Okay, and nowadays, which I didn't even write down here, but now they're trying to make it, since Jesus is God, they're trying to put God's name into Yeshua, and they're saying Yahshua, Yahshua.
Right.
Okay,
Yahusha.
Say, oh no, it was pronounced Yahushu.
Crazy.
The Christians don't know a thing about language. They don't know a thing about Hebrew. They don't know anything about the Hebrew language. They don't know anything about names. They don't know how names work. They don't understand how puns used to work in the Bible. Okay, Naomi. Naomi's life was embittered. She says, "No longer call me Naomi. Call me Merari." The word like maror.
Yep.
So she's making a pun.
Yeah,
so
just like the
giving herself
exactly.
Give herself a new name, okay, because of her embittered soul. So we don't have the slightest idea what Jesus was called, except according to two ancient sources in Christian writings, he was always and only called Jesus, the Greek.
Right.
We have evidence in linguistic writings by linguists, that it would have been never pronounced with the on the end. It would have been Yeshu. The ayin, if it was written, but it was not pronounced in that part of the Galilee. Okay, and you also have, even in Christian hymn writings, calling him Yeshu. So the whole thing about what to call Jesus is nonsense and knows no boundaries. Yahushu, Yahshua. It's all nonsense. It's all a gimmick to make Jesus appear to be even more Jewish, so Jesus becomes more palatable
Right.
to their Christian targets for missionizing. That's
Yeah.
the only reason they came up with this. And if you take a look at the history of the use of the word Yeshua, not Yeshua, okay, that word doesn't even come in the scene till about the late 50s, 1950s, 1960s, 1970s, which with the advent of Messianic Judaism, where they're trying to make everything Christian look Jewish so it wouldn't push away their Jewish targets.
Right. And that was birthed like directly out of the Assemblies of God, because they thought Jesus was coming back in the year 2000. So they had to get on their horse and convert all the Jews.
Right.
So
right.
they made up this story of
there's always a messianic fervor in the Christian world when the year ends with a 00. Okay.
Yeah.
2000, 1900, 1800, 1700, 1600 all had its messianic. Oh, here he comes. He's coming back. And then he doesn't come back. And then with depends on how, look, they didn't have cell phones back then. So pretty soon after the Christian disappointment that Jesus didn't come back in the year 00, 1900, 1800, 1700, 1600, pretty soon
right,
you get a whiplash against the Jews.
Right, but what's funny is
right in the 1900s.
Whose calendar are you basing your Messiah off of? The Roman one or the Hebrew one?
Well, the Christians do it off the Christian one. And 1930s began the Holocaust. Okay. 18, I can't remember the year. You had the Khmelnytsky massacres in the 16, I don't remember. Okay. My point is that when the year end 00 approaches, Christians say, oh, here he comes back. And then he doesn't come back. And then they wind up blaming the Jews. Okay. You've already seen, because 2000 came and went and there's no Jesus, and you've already seen an uptick now in anti-Semitism throughout the world.
Oh, yeah, 100%.
Because Jesus ain't coming back. He was never here. He was never here the way they say he was here to begin with.
Right.
So, but this whole Yeshua bit is absolute nonsense. The closest they might get is Yeshua, okay, but even that is nebulous because in the Galilean pronunciation it would have been Yeshu, which later gets picked up by the rabbis and say, oh yeah, Yimach Shemo v'Zikro, may his name be blotted out in his memory. But that's a later thing. Yeah. So never called Yeshua in his life. Probably called Jesus, according to early Christian fathers, Saint Cyril of Jerusalem.
I mean, he could have literally been called that by his followers too, because there were a lot of Greek names around at the time because Hellenized Judaism was catching on,
And tell me something, okay? Saul became Paul. Okay. They all had dual names. They all had local assimilated names, and then they apparently had a Jewish sounding name.
Right. Well, look at in the epistles you have Timotheus, who was supposedly had a Jewish mother and didn't know he was Jewish, right? With a Greek father.
Right. So
or Peter. That's not a Jewish name.
Peter. Right. Okay. They had local assimilated names, but then they had a Hebrew name. Saul of Tarsus, okay, became Paul.
Right, and that's all these messianics nowadays are calling these New Testament figures by their Jewish names. Yeah, Rav Shaul. I see it all the time.
You know why?
Like, he was a Gnostic, right? Like,
you know why they call him that? To make Christianity look palatable to Jews.
Yeah, exactly.
To make it look like it's a Jewish sect, which it never was. Or let me rephrase that. The earliest Christians might have been Jews, but they were incredibly assimilated Jews who knew far more about the pagan idolatry of the Greco-Roman world than they ever knew about the Hebrew scriptures about Judaism or God.
Right. or potentially Essenes who were just crazy
The Essenes
apocalyptics.
Essenes were lunatic fringe.
Mm-hmm.
No different than the David Koresh community of Waco, okay, or the Jim Jones of South America, where they took themselves away from the community.
Yeah.
Okay, and then pointed a finger back at what they left with disdain.
Yep.
That's what the Essene community did. And what's the first commandment? Be fruitful and multiply. And what's the characteristic we know from Josephus regarding the Essenes?
They demonized sex, 100%.
They were celibate.
Mm-hmm.
So they didn't even follow the halakha.
Right.
So isn't it wonderful how the world is so filled with nutcases?
Yeah, so nice, right?
Yeah.
And one final point.
Yes.
So this topic was actually sent in by a viewer asking if we wouldn't mind talking about this.
I hope we came close to answering his question.
Yeah, I think we did. I think we definitely did. But his last point is, and his name was supposed to be Emmanuel,
yeah,
which he was never called.
Good point.
I don't know if you want to take a minute to talk on that, or.
Well, I wish we could pull it up, but the New Testament text is very clear. It says that the angel tells Joseph, or depending on which version you're going to look at, the angel tells Mary.
I'll pull it up quick.
You will call his name Emmanuel.
I'll pull it up quick. What's the citation?
Right. They're basing that on Isaiah. And then the next sentence is call him Jesus, because he will save you from your sins. That's the tie-in to salvation. That's a pun. Okay, but it would have been Yeshua, not Yeshua. Okay. So if he's supposed to fulfill the prophecy of Isaiah, then he should have been called Emmanuel, but he was never called Emmanuel. The word Emmanuel only appears once in the entire New Testament, and it's a reference to Isaiah saying that the kid, the sign to Ahaz, is supposed to be Emmanuel.
Right. Here, I'll bring it up real quick.
All right, thank you. I don't want to get into the whole.
No, I'm just bringing up these last 4 verses of the citation in the New Testament.
All right.
Let me see. Can I zoom in? You see that?
Yeah, barely.
How about now?
A little bit. That's fine.
Okay.
All this was done that it might be fulfilled, which was spoken of the Lord by the prophet, saying, Behold, a virgin shall be with child and shall bring forth a son, and they shall call his name Emmanuel, which being interpreted is God with us. Then Joseph, being raised from sleep, did as the angel of the Lord had bidden him, and took unto him his wife, and knew her not till she had brought forth her firstborn son, and he called his name Jesus. So if he's called Jesus, why isn't he ever called Emmanuel?
Right.
A fulfillment of that verse from Isaiah would be to have called him Emmanuel. And there are plenty of problems I don't want to get into. Emmanuel does not mean God with us. It means God is with us.
Right.
Okay. It doesn't mean virgin. It means young woman. It doesn't mean will become with child. It means already, the Hebrew is already pregnant.
Right.
Well, but that's not our point tonight.
Also says she shall call his name Emmanuel.
And yes, and it says she shall call his name, and they misquote it as he shall call his name. Okay, so lots of problem with that. But the point that the person asking the question made is valid. He was never called Emmanuel.
Right.
Hey, Manny. Hello, Manny. Manuel. Never happened.
Right. And they, it's pretty clear when we read the Tanakh that names are very important, and they serve as a prophetic portent, So if Jesus was actually named Emmanuel, okay, but you find nowhere that was legitimate. So what's even the point of including it? What's even the point of including the citation?
because they rip it out of its context, they mistranslate it, they'll do anything they can to manipulate the text to make it look like Jesus fulfilled Scripture, so that he was the Messiah that the blind Jews, can't even see.
Right, and it makes sense totally that someone with a Jewish worldview would rightly reject this, because when you read it, call his name Emmanuel, but then the next verse says, "Oh, but we called him Jesus." The Jewish person's like, "What?"
Exactly.
This makes no sense.
Exactly.
So it's very simple and very easy to spot that Matthew, for one, didn't have a Jewish worldview, had no idea how the Jewish names work in religion, in a religious context.
Why did the Septuagint appeal? And there's a whole history of the real Septuagint, but it doesn't matter. Why did the Septuagint appeal to the gospel writers? Because they were assimilated, if they were Jewish at all, which I have my doubts. They were very assimilated. They knew Greek. They didn't know Hebrew. They relied on the language they knew, which was the horrible Greek translation of the Hebrew scriptures.
Right.
By the time this is written, okay, the Ebionites, which was the name given to the Jewish sect that were believers in Jesus as the Jewish Messiah, had died out. They had been labeled a heresy, and they died out over time. They were labeled a heresy because they wanted to cling to the Jewish concept of a Messiah, not dying, saving man God, but rather someone who would throw off the oppression of Rome.
Right.
Okay. They wanted to cling to Judaism's laws, the halakha, the mitzvot, God-given commandments. Okay. For a lot of reasons, they were labeled a heresy and kicked out of the earliest church. And eventually, as a Christian group, they died out, or they were totally assimilated into the Christian, Gentile, non-Jewish, Greco-Roman world.
Right. There's also a theory that they made their way to Arabia and were the precursor to Islam.
Okay.
Because Islam has a non-divine Jesus figure,
Yeah, well, I think there's a different reason for that. I think that Muhammad, in creating a religion to replace the horrible pagan idolatry that was around him, that they used to worship at the Kaaba with little bitty statues, and he got rid of that.
Yeah.
So he wanted to mold Islam, his new religion, in the image of both Judaism and Christianity, and he got stories from the rabbis, from the Jewish community, got stories from the Christians about their Jesus, and put them all together in the Quran. So I don't think that they were descendants of the Ebionites by any means. I think that was just simply Muhammad consulting with Jews and Christians. But who knows? Whatever. That's for the Muslims to sort out.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, all right, my friend.
Yep.
That was a good one. Any final remarks? Anything left to say?
Not really, no.
Okay.
I just love the way they manipulate anything they can and everything they can to make it palatable for their Jewish targets, and to make themselves feel that they're Jewish.
Right.
They can feel Jewish because they say Rav Shaul instead of Paul of Tarsus. Paul instead of Paul. They can feel Jewish because they can grow their side curls or wear a talit. They can feel,
cosplay. Jewish cosplay.
LARPing. Live action role play as Jews.
Right.
Christian wolves in Jewish sheep's clothing.
Yeah. I mean, for one final point to leave everyone off, we understand from the Torah, etc., that you set up judges for yourselves, right? Houses of judgment, a Sanhedrin. If the Sanhedrin at the time saw this guy, said, nope, not him, that's it. It wasn't him.
Right.
So that's all you're doing is cosplaying. You're pretending to be Jewish.
Absolutely. And always remember that the whole purpose of it was to gain more Jews as converts. I became as a Jew to the Jews. First Corinthians 9:9. Not 9:19. 1 Corinthians 9, I think it's 19. It could be 9 or 19. I don't remember.
Right.
Yep. Or 20. Somewhere. At any rate, yes. I will pretend to be a Jew to the Jews. I will pretend to be Greek to the Greeks, and then later I'll pretend to be anything I can to get some of them to convert. That is a loose translation, but that's exactly what he meant.
Right. But yeah, I think that's a major point, everyone, is it's straight. We know that Deuteronomy was the orations of Moshe. So if Moses, before the nation crosses across the Jordan into the promised land, says, you listen to your judges, they sit in my seat, right? They are the authority. And Jesus said that too. The Pharisees and the teachers of the law sit in Moses' seat. Right.
Which means they have the authority of Moses. Do as they say, not as they do, which is where we get that line, do as they say, not as they do. Mm-hmm. But the whole point is that they still have the authority, and what they say was supposed to go.
Right. And if they said it wasn't him, it wasn't him.
As the early church became more and more made up of non-Jews, as the early church became more and more all about the stories of dying, saving pagan man gods, okay, the church was no longer a Jewish anything, and was based on a theology that had nothing to do with Judaism, with the Bible, or with God.
Exactly.
All right.
Well, I hope that helps everybody.
I hope that answered his question.
Yeah, for sure.
I hope that covered it. Simply no way to know what he was called, but the idea that he was called Yeshua, never happened.
Right. Yeah. Also, if anyone kind of disbelieves what we said here based upon like the Hebrew or anything like that, check out William Hall's and your what's that, Hebrew Jumpstart? Is that what it's called?
Hebrew Jumpstart, yes.
Hebrew Jumpstart. It
go to YouTube.
All the letters, the Nekudos, goes over all that. So
go to YouTube and do a YouTube search for Hebrew Jump Start. It'll come up. Learn Hebrew in 1 hour.
Right. And you'll be able to see that all the pronunciations that we brought here today are completely how the language works. So if you didn't believe this video, check that one out. Come back, rewatch this one.
And by the way, do you have any idea how many Christian websites there are that go out of their way to prove that Jesus was never called Yeshua? There are Christian websites over and over again that's just as many that say he was never called Yeshua as there are Messianic and Christian websites that say he was called Yeshua. But he would never have been called Yeshua. He'd have been called Yeshua.
All right, we're about to sign off, but one more thing. You're going to find this funny, okay?
Yeah.
You as a Hebrew speaker, I heard a Christian say to my one friend, it was before he and I left Christianity, and he was actually a Hebrew teacher, okay? He's since converted, but regardless, he was a Hebrew teacher, and this Christian pastor came up to him, was talking to him about the origin of the letter J, right? Like in the name Jesus, And he said that the letter J and the name Jesus would have been what Joshua was called at Sinai, and simply just everyone forgot it, and then it came back with Jesus. And he's just sitting there saying, like, what are you talking about? Like, where do you people come up with this stuff? It's basically what he said to him.
And the answer where they come up with it is they come up with it on the fly. They pull it out of thin air, anything and everything they can to make them look intelligent, make them look Jewish, make them look knowledgeable.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Or God spoke to them.
Oh, of course. Well, there's always that. The Holy Spirit.
Can't forget that part.
Yeah.
But okay, everybody. Rabbi Stuart Federow, as we said at the beginning, author of Judaism and Christianity: A Contrast, linked in description. Pick yourself up a copy.
Yeah, take a look at all the books that you have there below.
Yeah, we have a good bit down there.
Steve has a whole library of counter-Christian missionary books you should check out and read, learn.
Right, and on top of that, there's also some Origins of Christianity works, also some Noachide life, and actually even a book about conversion. So check them out.
Yep.
I think wherever you are in this walk, there's something down there that'll help you out.
Absolutely.
But hey, until next time, everybody, I'm Steve Eisenhower. This was the Exodus Project. We'll see you next time.